And we were working at Azim Premji Foundation at that time. And Azim Premji Foundation is an amazing organization. It's a large organization. It works all the way from the Prime Minister's office to the villages of Barmed and Dhamtari. And so one got to see the
Amazing
sector.
organization.
It's a
It
large organization.
out.
It works. And we also got to see a lot of other organizations working on various societal issues, which was quite humbling. There are some amazing people with amazing ideas working all over the country. A lot of them probably not even known to a lot of us. But one thing we saw time and again was that a lot of these organizations were just not able to grow, were remaining small, were even sort of closing down because they were not managing some of the risks that they had. They had funding challenges, they had governance challenges. So we realized that there was a serious, and they were all what you would traditionally think of as leadership and management issues. And we really felt that if you could in some way address the sort of talent gap that exists at that leadership and management level for organizations working on social change, you'd make a huge contribution. So that's one side of it, and I want to park that thought in your mind. The second was, people who like me who came in with having done a lot of work in growing businesses in sustainable ways, etc., and somewhere realized that not all ideas that we had or the ideas we came up with, given our business management background, seemed to be relevant, and to be candid, even sometimes disastrous, in terms of what it sort of ended up achieving. And one got thinking about these two things. There is a leadership challenge, and the traditional form of management and leadership seem to sort of let you down time and again while working on societal issues. So we sort of went around to try and understand what can one learn from around the world and what's been done. So we actually went around. So we talked to people in Berkeley, in Stanford, in Harvard, in London School of Economics, Asian Institute of Management, INSEAD, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. I mean, and a lot of institutes in India. So we went to IRMA, we went to the IIMs, we went to a whole lot of places and talked to people. What we found is that there's a lot of people who realize that, yeah, there is a need to address leadership and management in the sector. And a lot of people were working on it, except that very often they work from their own basis. And I'll explain that. So if I'm a business school, I'm trying to figure out how can a business school address the leadership and management issues in the sector. If I'm a public policy school, I'm trying to run not-for-profit management, given my DNA and understanding of how it's run, or I'm a social work school trying to do this. And what we realized is none of them were really able to address the issue, at least the way we imagined it. And there was a feeling that we needed to build this space of development management and building the theory for development management from the grounds up. And that's what we came back and decided to do. And it was not that, three, four of us just sat together and decided to do. We spoke to, north of 1,000 people in the sector, a lot of very renowned people, founders of renowned institutions like IRMA. We really talked to a lot of people. And, with those conversations, with those dialogues, we sort of came up with this thing that we need to build this domain. Maybe we need to build this from grounds up. So we'll start with a clean sheet of paper. And the guidance was, let's build it by talking to people who are working in the sector, because people have solved these issues somewhere or the other. And there's a lot of experience that we have of working, several centuries in the development sector. So in some senses, ISDM is all about addressing what I would call a crisis of leadership and management in the sector, trying to address the problem of what is that type of management that is required for the sector, and then developing it, working with individuals and organizations who've been working in this space forever. And that's really where we all started off in, with ISDM. And if I can touch on what is this whole development management, you've been working on this, you've been getting people. So, what is it really about? And what we found is that, firstly, of course, there wasn't a curriculum out there. If I wanted to start an MBA program today, one could have easily, sort of copied and pasted something from somewhere or the other. For development management, truth be told, we couldn't pick anything that we could copy and paste. It was all built literally from a scratch of paper, from a clean sheet of paper. And when we got down to it, what we realized is that development management firstly derives a lot of its, axioms around the idea of humanity and what one would call universal human values. So the underlying drivers of how you would lead and manage an organization in this sector are sort of derived from fairness, from compassion, from ideas of equality, and then the kind of society that you want, which could be a democratic society, a secular society, or whatever is the society. So there's a lot of universal values and an idea of a desirable society. So a lot of how you lead and manage organizations in the sector need to root itself in these sort of ideas. And by contrast, if I was in business management, and if you study the history of business management, you will see that it was derived its axioms from the industrial revolution. Business management has its origins in the industrial revolution, when suddenly you could produce a lot of goods in large quantities and large volume. You needed a management system to manage money, manage goods, manage inventory, manage people. And thereafter, business management sort of derived a lot of its learnings from capitalism. And capitalism is a form that has created, wealth like it's never created before in the world, albeit it did create a lot of inequality. So development management derives its structures and ideas from a very different set of sort of values and ideas of a good society. And once you go into it a little more, and if I can talk about our PG program and what are the kind of components that you will find over there. So the first thing is there's a lot of understanding of society, because every problem, every societal problem exists in a context. If there isn't a context, there won't be a problem. So the first and foremost thing is a huge investment for our students to understand what is society all about. What are the complexities that society is built from? What are the interactions of different peoples with different sort of aspirations and different stakeholder groups having different ideas of how a society should progress. So there's the complexity is the first part. The second part is about yourself. So a lot of work is around understanding yourself, understanding your privileges, understanding your biases, where you might have come from. Why does an individual think in a certain way? How is that relevant to that person's ideas of what she or he thinks is the way society should be? What he or she might have studied in her own life, what sort of family she might have come from, and going into understanding, bringing those and bringing some sort of, let's say, authenticity to how you think about these things, how you reflect on these things, and then how you connect those ideas to the larger context of society. And once you understood the context, which is society, once you understood yourself, how do you bring those to bear in management choices, management decisions, management frameworks, while leading and managing social sector organizations? And that combination of bringing context, self, and cognitive ideas of management together for us sort of builds the construct of development management. Some ways, to put it very simply, we say you need to bring your hand, heart, and head together, and that really is what helps us build. um, Coming back to ISDM, and I'll finish with so what is our vision for the world, if you like. We realize that it's not about a postgraduate program, and some other institutions, and even in our country, have made the mistake of assuming that if you want to develop a new domain, it's all about putting a really, really good curriculum together. And there's no, notwithstanding that you have to put a damn good curriculum together. What we also realize that if you really want development management to take roots and really change the way organizations in the sector are led and managed in the long run, you have to work on the entire ecosystem. So you have to work with the organizations to be prepared to say, we need to look at how we lead and manage our organizations differently. And people who study development management make a lot of sense. I mean, this, you could sort of draw an analogy from the business management days when engineers ran organizations, and then the whole MBA came with IIM Calcutta and IIM Ahmedabad, and suddenly, they started adding a lot of value. So that's the sort of if you like, first level of sort of understanding that. And the second is, so organization, the second is the talent, right? So you have to prepare talent. To prepare talent, you have to prepare the curriculum, the domain, the knowledge. So the third bit is about how do we build the knowledge assets. So our view is that in a decade, in 2 decades, in 3 decades, we will build theories, frameworks for development management. Like business management over 200 years has built various frameworks, from Porter's framework to BCG framework to what have you. hopefully development management will have its own set of frameworks and ideas on which people can generalize and apply them in different situations in different organizations. So there is organizations to work with, there is knowledge to work with, there is talent to work with. And the fourth dimension for us is that we'd like to create knowledge assets and pathways for other institutions to be able to offer development management in the country, in the world. And we are a not for profit and we work on Creative Commons license. So the idea is ISDM will probably just set one campus and create the soft power, if you like, which can be used by institutions across the country free of cost to offer opportunities for youngsters across the country and across the world to come and sort of learn how you build careers in leadership and management in the social sector. And that sort of reminds me of a point, which is that our conversations are not limited to India. Like I said, we started by talking to people across the world, and today we have a lot of people who are interested in our work. We have people from Berkeley, we have people from Harvard, we have people from INSEAD, a whole lot of places, people from IIMs, of course, people from various social work schools in the country, and all of them are part of this process. So oftentimes internally we say that we're building this domain through collective wisdom. So I want to take a pause there and see if there are questions. And I don't know, Priyanka, you might have to help me with that. If you've been seeing some questions, and I've got a few more sort of listed here.
Yes, Ravi. So I'll take you through some of the questions that some of our participants had shared with us through the Google form that I had shared. So Ravi, if you could talk a little more about what can people expect from ISDM as a school, the one-year program, and if you can just start talking from there, and I'll add more to you.
All right. No, that's a useful, very relevant question, Priyanka. In fact, I want to talk about our 2-year journey since ISDM has been set up, because in some ways that'll explain what the school is and where the school has reached and what one can expect at this point in time. So if you look at these 2 years, ISDM has managed to build an amazing well-wisher group. And I'm telling you, I can't emphasize what a phenomenal group of people we have supporting and backing ISDM. And they come in so many different ways, whether it is, people who come to teach in our college, and there would be the who's who of the social sector in this country, whether it is organizations who want to come and sort of, allow us to write case studies, or want to come and teach in the institution, or want to come and, offer what we call residency, which is like an internship, or eventually come for placement. Again, they're the who's who of the country, really aspirational, reputed organization, from international NGOs to grassroots Indian NGOs, from research and advocacy based organization to implementing type organization. So the whole gamut of people. So we've got an amazing group of people who are backing ISDM, and like I said earlier, right, collective wisdom, and the wisdom is coming from some of the most amazing people in this country. Today we have a curriculum which is, I don't think there's anything like that anywhere in the world, which I briefly described. So if you come to ISDM, you will meet some amazing people. You will engage in a curriculum that's been built from scratch, built for purpose, which means we've built it specifically from the sector for the sector. So by the people from the sector, for the people who want to join the sector. We have students right off the first batch who came from across the country. So, we typically in the first 2 years had a batch size of about 60 students. So we had 67 students the first batch, I think 66 in the second batch, and they came from across the country. So they came from, 19 different states, with literally an equal distribution, northeast, southwest, middle, you name it. And from all over the country, you had students coming. So the diversity that you will see when you come to ISDM is quite phenomenal. And the diversity is in many ways, right? So the current batch has 35 girls and 31 boys. They come from all sorts of backgrounds. They could be from engineering, arts, social work, commerce, journalism. There's even the odd doctor who sort of joins us in these programs. So if you come to ISDM, you can expect to see diversity. You can expect to see people who are some of the most amazing people in this country who come through to teach. You will have a very vibrant sort of a campus where there's discussions, and students come in by 9 in the morning and struggle literally have to be pushed out of the doors of the college by about 8 o'clock in the evening. But through the day, it's like a real happening place, with discussions, with debates, with arguments, and all our work is group work. And I must make a point here, which is that there are a lot of things that ISDM is introducing, not just to development management, but even to the higher education space. We really are redefining how higher education should be approached. And I'll give you some examples. I think our entire education system, not just the higher education system, has become absolutely rote based. So we have nothing that is rote based. There is no exams that you need to write. So there's nothing that you need to mug up for. It's all about your own learning journeys. And truth be told, my learning journey will be very different from the person sitting next to me, because that person's life is very different. That person's aspirations are different. That person's of a visualization of society is very different. So we have very, very different learning journeys, and we appreciate those different learning journeys. We very often refer to a phrase at ISDM, which is that you learn the most from people who are least like you. And we really emphasize on that learning from diversity. We don't have anything that is competitive, because we believe that collaboration is the most important quality if you're working in this sector. Unfortunately, as all of us know, the world has become so competitive. Our higher education colleges just really thrive on pushing competition, and everybody is struggling to get 99.99 marks or whatever it is. Our students don't get any grades, so when a student passes out of our place, nobody's higher or lower. Nobody's an A plus and somebody's a B minus. No, none of that. I will have a portfolio, Priyanka will have a portfolio, and whoever else is a student will have a portfolio to come out with. So we are really introducing very new ideas. We have a whole concept of a bricklayer. So we have faculty who will come and share their experiences in the classroom, and outside the classroom, the bricklayer sits in small groups of students to try and make sense of what was discussed in the class. And then they apply it in what we call a problem-based learning approach, where they're working on a real problem that they identified when they went to their districts in fairly early part of their the program. So it's really very, very different, and I almost feel envious of our students, and I wish I was a student today.
Thank you, Ravi. So there are two more questions which I think will help you build on to what you were sharing. One is, I want to know more about the faculty, what type of material we'll study. Is there any field exposure or only theoretical portion that we will study? So if you could talk a little more on that. And how should I find my way towards a particular area of concern in the development sector, which is a little more zooming out? And that is design of policy framework, research aspects, and its impact on environment and the humanity. So,
Okay. So let me pick the first two together and maybe the third one separately, which is this thing around what our program is and who the faculty are, and is there any element of field. So like I said, our program is nothing like you'll see anywhere. I don't think anywhere in the world there is a curriculum that's been designed the way we have. So almost all our faculty are practitioners. That's the key for us. So everybody who comes to teach, and that goes back to our idea that we want to build the knowledge for this space from practice. So this is the whole idea of theorizing from practice, right? So everybody who comes in, even if he comes in or she comes in from a university system, she would have been working in the social sector in one way or the other. So pretty much anyone and everyone who comes into the classroom to sort of teach or interact, if you like, with the students, will be coming from a practice background, and they bring those practices into the classroom, and they come from diverse sectors, from diverse types of work, from diverse functional aspects, and even from diverse ideologies. Sometimes in the beginning you'll find students going, oh my god, that guy came and said one thing, and this guy who's come today has said exactly the opposite. What am I going to do with this? Because there are ideologies in the space, and one needs to be able to engage and comprehend how these things work and form your own views of what we do. So first thing about faculty, all of them are practitioners, and we choose each faculty with so much care and so much effort and so much discussions and dialogue, you will not believe it. So every one of our faculty, and I'm guessing we would have about 60 to 70 visiting faculty who come to campus over the course of the 1 year, and have interactions ranging from a day to 3 days to 4 days or whatever it is. And we have a different form of timetabling. So it's not like 1 hour you sit and do some subject A, and then the next hour you do some totally irrelevant and disconnected subject, very often we work through the whole day on a topic that that particular faculty has come to do. Sometimes we do it over 3 days, depending on what it is. So the faculty is all practitioners. The faculty will come and do it as a continuous sort of a process, so you really get to engage with them. So that's on the faculty. Coming to the program, we went sort of visualize our program, and some of you might have seen it on our website as sort of 3 phases. And we say the first phase is really coming from a context to a mission. Like I said earlier, every problem in the social sector exists in a context. So you look at you're in a context, and from there you arrive, you look at various issues, you figure out what might be some of those issues that you would want to work on, what might be the causes of those issues, and then figure out how you're going to address those causes. So the first phase, if you visualize it, it's like coming from a context to a mission. The second phase of our program is about, now that you have a mission, how do you move from a mission to an organization? Because that's really the space we are in, right? If you want to work in the social space, how do you design sustainable organization that you can achieve whatever you set out to achieve, which might be scale, which might be width, which might be depth, whatever that is. So phase two is all about moving from mission to organization. So now we're moving from converting that mission into an intervention, and for that intervention, what form of organization is required, what sort of organization design, organization culture, behaviors, team, and then you get into functions, right? So communication, finance, accounting, project management, law, volunteerism, whatever it is, all that requires goes into building an organization. And the third phase, and this is an important phase because very often organizations get caught in a bit of an activity trap, is about moving from organization to impact, which is closing the loop, right? You started with context to mission, from mission to organization, and organization to impact. So that's how it'll all flow. So to break it down, we have it as 8 terms of roughly 6 weeks each. A couple of terms where it sort of gets changed a little bit. The first 2 terms, which is of about 12 weeks, 6 weeks plus 6 weeks, is all about perspectives of development, understanding society, understanding development. Term 3 is a shorter term of 2 weeks, but probably one of the most exciting terms, when all the students go out in groups of 6 to 7 to a different district each. And they all go to different districts across the country. And we typically try and choose, very diverse districts for the students. So they go out there, they spend 2 weeks, they're, connected to a local NGO there who will help them, meet whoever they want to. They construct their days over that 2 week period, and they come back, and it's like an immersion in some ways. And then they come back and reflect on what they saw, what they felt, and sort of identify which of those things that bothered us do we want to pick up and work on. And I want to flag that for the next question, areas of choice, which is this thing about what do you really burn for. And once they've identified that, we go into term 4, 5, and 6, which are all what we call organizational topics. And 4, 5, 6 is all about organization topics. Term 7, now you're coming towards the end of the program. We use a phrase from the medical fraternity, or the medical school, which is residency, which is, now you've done 6 terms of studying the space. Now go across to an institution, to an organization, and try and actually learn by working. So we line up a whole lot of organizations and get real problems. So it's not like a internship where you land up in in an organization and then they're wondering, okay, what do we do with this girl who's come today for the next 2 months? We've actually pre-identified the problem. The problem has been put on the table for the students to choose, and the students have done a lot of homework before they go for that residency. So the residency is another 7 weeks or something like that. And there's a learning. Now you're seeing a real organization, you're sort of testing what you heard in the classroom, you're actually trying and working on a real problem. So you sort of get your hands dirty and apply all that you've learned in the classroom. And then you come back in term 8, and term 8 is all about now preparing for the job that you want to go and do, because we want our students to be hitting the road running and be ready to be working. So term 8 is all about a combination of actually implementation type work. So you'll have things like project management, you'll have things of monitoring and evaluation, or whatever related to actual implementation, and a whole lot of electives. And the electives have been chosen based on the kind of jobs that exist for our students. So the electives could be in communication and engagement. The electives could be in program management. It could be in fundraising. It could be in monitoring and evaluation. It could be in CSR. And interestingly, the last batch, what we notice is there are a bunch of youngsters who want to set up their own organizations. So we have electives on social enterprise. In fact, just so that if I can sort of digress there, we even set up a small incubator for some 6 of our students who wanted to do their own thing. And we said, fine, so you don't go into placement, we'll give you a small stipend for 6 months, try out what you want to do, and use our office, use our internet, use us as your mentors. And if you get funded, great. And if things take off, even better. And if it doesn't, no problem, come back next year for the placement. So we even created a bit of an incubator towards the end of the last year. So that's how the whole program progresses. And that question of how much of it is field, it depends on how you want to look at it. If you look at physical time that you spend out in the field, it's like I told you, there's 2 weeks that you go out for a rural immersion in the districts. There's another 6 to 8 weeks that you go out and work with an organization. So roughly about 30% of your time is physically out in the field. Now, I would argue that much more than that is actually field, because everybody who's coming into the classroom is coming from the field. So in many senses, if I'm coming and I'm the CEO of Lend a Hand, and I'm talking about how I've been working with the government across 23 states, that's field coming into the classroom. So our entire course is based on field and field related learnings and field, like I said, it's all practice based learning, right? So field is a huge component of what we do in all its senses. The other question, which is an interesting one, is an area of choice, right? How do I choose where do I work? Now, that's obviously a very individual type question, and I have two ways of responding to that, because I get asked this question very often. The first one is, some of us, because of our life experiences, uh, have either benefited from something or suffered from something, have had an intense experience, and then want to work in that space. Somebody lost his mother to cancer and wants to work with cancer survivors. Somebody else wants to work with children and education because she derived so much from education. Someone else feels very harassed about how women are treated in our country and wants to work on gender empowerment. Somebody is a rape victim and has now been working with sort of helping rape survivors in rehabilitating and helping them regain a life. So one set is based on your own experience. Now, not all of us might have had such intense experiences, and we still want to do something in this space. Now, for them, my own view is twofold. One, I don't know if you've heard of the ikigai concept, which is a Japanese concept. Try and put four things together, right? So what are you passionate about? What are you good at? What does the society need? And what's the society willing to pay for? So if you put those four things and see if there is some common spot that's coming out of what are you good at, what does the society need, and what are you passionate about, right? And then, of course, if people are willing to pay money or not for that, and depending on which stage of life you're in, the money might be more important or less important. But if you're able to draw that sort of if you like, circles, and then see the overlap and figure out where it all matches, then that's one way to arrive at it. The third way to arrive at it is to go with your values. If you believe you stand for fairness, then you just go do whatever you want to do. You want to work with in gender, you want to work in livelihood, you want to work in whichever area you want to work, public health, education. You take fairness, and wherever you go, you bring that fairness to play. If you want to talk about empowerment for every individual, then you take that as a value and go in and work. And then it doesn't matter where you go to work, as long as you hold on to values, because then you're proud about living and working your value system. So those are three different ways of looking at it. Of course, as you go in and if you gain more experience, and I encourage people to do a lot of volunteering work, because there's nothing like actually going down there and seeing what it feels like. If you feel you think you're going to like advocacy type work, go volunteer in an advocacy type organization. If you think working in schools is what you like, go and spend a year or two in schools. In fact, a lot of youngsters who go and spend and teach for India and Gandhi Fellows get tremendous joy and experience out of that. And not all of them necessarily go into education. A lot of them do. A lot of others find some other things that they want to do. So volunteering and talking to people, and when you talk to people, don't meet them in coffee cafe day and Starbucks. Meet them in their place of work. You get a much better sense of the work they do, and the sort of vibes you get out of being there. So it's worth investing in that time to figure out what you want to do if you haven't yet figured out what you really want to do.
Great. Thank you, Ravi. We also have some questions popping up right now, so I'll read them
Yes,
out for
please.
you, and
You
we'll
can
move
help.
on to the next ethic later. There's Yashwendra who's asking, since Sir said that we don't have any exams, then what is the criteria to evaluate students? And this is my favorite question.
Yes. No, that's a great question. And in fact, students are very often, actually not even students, even, recruiters have come and asked us that question. So while there are no exams, it doesn't mean that there is no evaluation and there's no assessment. We have a fairly intense assessment process, except that we make it as non-threatening and as friendly as possible and as meaningful as possible. Because the idea is not to prove that somebody is better than somebody else. The idea of assessment and evaluation is to help you in your learning journey. So if you're able to get feedback that helps you understand, what am I, what sort of person am I, what is my way of working, how do I seem to interact, what are the topics I seem to understand, what are the topics I'm able to apply, what's the level at which I'm able to engage with different topics, that's very valuable feedback. It doesn't, I don't need the world to know that I'm an A minus or a C plus or whatever it is. So our whole assessment is based around three big levers. The first one is a self-assessment. So you've got your rubrics, you know what you've gone through, and you assess yourself. And the sort of words have been written out for you to say, are you at this level, this level, this level, this level, this level, whatever that is. And maybe there are 4 or 5 levels. So there's a whole self-assessment which you sit down and do it as honestly as you want, because it's not going to matter to anyone else what you decide for yourself. And you're not either going to be rewarded or punished for what you rate yourself. The second is, I told you, we all work in groups. So everything is group work. So there's something called a peer assessment. So I don't know if you know the Johari window. There are things that you may not see yourself, which others are able to see. So we have this peer assessment. So you work with your peer group and ask them to assess you on how they felt about it. And it's for you. It's again not for the public domain. It's not to announce, your, whatever grades or anything like that. So the second whole process is this peer review process, which is again very useful because you're hearing others who work very closely with you day in and day out, through the entire year, are giving you feedback. And the third is, I told you about the bricoleurs. The bricoleurs who sort of spend time in small groups of 20, 30 students and are seeing them, again, pretty much day in, day out, they give feedback. And in that final session, when it all comes together, there's a panel of people who are from within the institution, from outside the institution, because you get different perspectives, who will sit with you and listen to your journey in the term that's just gone by, and will give you feedback on what they feel are things that you seem to be really good at, the way your approach to things, maybe areas that you can sort of work on. So there's a lot of, so if you look at it, there are 6 terms, and pretty much for at least 5 of those 6 terms, there is a term end assessment process where all these things happen: self-assessment, peer assessment, bricoleur assessment, and a panel review process. So there is a lot of assessment. Now the question comes up, how will somebody coming to hire know whether I'm the topper or not? So we don't have an idea of a topper or the first quartile or anything like that. So in fact, last time when the recruiters came to campus on day one, they started asking us, so how do we decide which student and how have they done and fared in your institution? So we then had to do something which we now continue to do every time, which is we do a 1 hour presentation on how our program is, how our assessments are, what's the kind of ethos that we have, what are the kind of values that we build in our students. And then everybody loves it, and they're very happy not to have a grade but a portfolio. So every student who graduates out of ISDM is building a portfolio over the 1 year she is with us. So it's writings, it's recordings, it's project work, it's submissions, it's whatever they feel they want to include in their portfolio, they will include in their portfolio. And then ISDM also writes a small one pager on what we have seen in terms of the shifts that we have seen in the student. So it's not enough for us that at an absolute level you came in as fantastic and you went out as the same level. For us, that's not a great student. A great student is somebody who's made a journey, who's made a shift during the time and has demonstrated an ability to learn and grasp new things and apply it in her life, and how she's changed, not just at a cognitive level, but also in the way she thinks, in the way she handles, in the way she works with others, and so on and so forth. So we're very proud of our whole assessment work, and it makes a very different sort of a person out of you by the end of it, unlike what a lot of us have gone through in college, which just shatters you and sort of makes a mess of your life. And and it serves no purpose because you're studying for the exam, and pretty much the minute the exam is over, I know so many students who tell me it just sort of disappears. It's like a duster that gets applied on our brains and everything is just wiped out. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Ravi. Participants also want to know about admissions at ISDM. So, what's the process like? Who are the kind of people ISDM is looking at? And what are options for scholarships? So, some
Very
of those
interesting.
questions.
So, first, let me talk about the admission process and the requirements. So, the first thing is we need everybody to be a minimum graduate because this is a postgraduate program. So, that's the only minimum requirement that we have. And beyond that is what we really look for is a passion for working in this space. We really love students who come with a passion for social change, who have a passion for making society a better place. We really look for that. And if a student comes with a graduate degree, and it doesn't matter what that degree is, it doesn't matter how much they've scored in that degree, but they have a passion for social change, we really love them. And that's the thing we really look for. And oftentimes it's people who've gone and done some volunteering, who've done some work, who've started their own NGOs, all sorts of things that we hear about. But finally, when a student joins in, every student, I can tell you, is like a story. Every student has a story about where they came from, what they've done, what they've learned, where they've failed, and why they want to come into ISDM. So, graduate plus a huge passion for social change, that's really what we're looking for. The process itself, I think you apply online and our applications are open at this point in time. And you apply online. There's first round is a telephone interview, which is a very short 5-10 minute interview where we just have a quick chat to confirm all that you've said in your application, just to have a conversation, because unfortunately our program is in English language. So we just want to be able to make sure that people are able to engage in the English language. And thereafter you're put through to a final personal interview. And we do these personal interviews in different cities: Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad, sometimes in Calcutta, sometimes in the Northeast, in Guwahati and places like that. And otherwise we'll do a Skype interview. But before the interview, we also have a small simple test. And that test basically looks at very simple numeracy, very simple data interpretation, and a little bit of English. And then there is a personal interview, and the personal interview is really talking about your passion and why you're interested in this space, and why ISDM. So that's on the selection process. And this year I think we've got a larger number of seats. In the past we had about 60 students. This year we might go up to 90, maybe even up to 100 students. So we have a demand, so we want to sort of be able to cater to that. And coming to the whole question of fees and scholarship, so we are a not-for-profit, so we raise monies, and we have to justify to our funders how we're spending the money and whether we're spending it well. But we also believe that no student who has been selected into ISDM after that process I talked about is going to miss out because of financial reasons. That's an absolute surety we have. So we literally uh, shape the fees for pretty much every student who comes to us. So, you'll have students who will come to us and say, I can't pay any of your fees. We'll say, fine, we'll give you 100% scholarship. There are students who will come to say, you know what, not only I can't pay your fees, I need money to bear some of the, expenses that I have to bear because, I have a family, I have some parents, I have somebody to take care of. I will say, well, here's the deal. We'll give you some money also. There are others who will say that, I come from a family where I can pay, but I don't want to ask my parents for money. So we tell them, well, then how about you pay once you start earning? And they say, yeah, that's fine. So, I'll finish the 1-year program. And after that, if I get a job and I get a salary, then, I'll pay monthly installments and repay, whatever the fees is over a couple of years time. 2 years, I think, is what we do. There are others who say, no, I don't have a problem paying the fees. I'm happy to pay the fees, and so on and so forth. So fair amount of scholarships for studying, scholarships for staying, scholarships for boarding. We have every sort of scholarship. Even the odd person, like I said, we'll even give a stipend if required. But scholarships are available from 0 to 100%. And I know there is an incentive to apply early because it helps us to sort of reduce our admission process costs, and that's why we encourage people to sort of apply early. And I know our admissions team has offered a guaranteed 25% scholarship to those who apply in the first phase. So yeah, our idea is that if youngsters are willing to make choices and work in the social sector, which sometimes is giving up a little bit of salary, then we believe that society should pay for their studies. So that's our pitch to the philanthropists, that as a society we need to pay for these students' studies. So our costs are way more than what our stated fees are, and what students pay is even less than what our fees are, and that's intentional.
Great. Ravi, there is also a question around placements. So what is the process like? What kind of organizations come? Is there a guaranteed placement? Yeah.
No, that's yeah. We have some very interesting news on that front. So when we started the first batch, which was the 2017-18 batch, um, we actually did placements even before we did admissions. You'll wonder what do you mean you did placements before you did admissions? Because we went out to organization, and I told you we work with the ecosystem. So we are not sitting in a college waiting for students, teaching them and sending them out. We are out there, and we are talking to organizations across the country and all types of organizations. The high-end international organizations, whether it's the Gates Foundation or the Ford Foundation, to national, organizations, whether it's an Azim Premji Foundation, whether it is a CRY, whether it's a Pradhan, whether it's a Pratham. So we are talking to a whole range of organizations across the country, and talking about our program, asking them whether they would be interested in students who are part of such a program. They come and actually teach in our program, and thereby have a closer engagement and understanding. So we did a lot of that work. So last year when the batch graduated, I think there were about 57 students who graduated. Out of them, about 10 opt 10 or 11 opted for either going into setting up their own social enterprise, which I told you earlier. We quickly created a small incubator and supported them, and another 5 students who said they would like to work for ISDM. So if I take them out, the remaining 57 went into placement. So we have campus placement. So we invite all these organizations, like I said, ranging from international NGOs, Indian NGOs, operational NGOs, consulting organizations, for-profit organizations, CSR organizations, all sorts of social purpose organizations. And um, uh, the exact number I may not have, but roughly in excess of 100 organizations came to campus with about 300 jobs for our 57 students who were graduating. So that was a huge, huge joy for us, not only because our students, 100% of them were placed, but also because of the demonstration by the sector, a belief in what ISDM was doing and what the students who are coming out of ISDM bring to them. So the placements were really phenomenal. And, we obviously, do all the maths to see, how the metrics are. And uh, roughly the average salary that a student went out with was something like 7.1 lakhs per annum. And that's huge for us because we believe that the sector needs to pay for people working in this sector. This idea that people working in this sector should only do it voluntarily and should not have any interest in money. It's fine, you don't have interest in money, but you need to sort of live a dignified life and be able to sort of justify your existence. And we know a lot of youngsters are lost from this sector because the salaries are not there. So we are quite happy that the sector is willing to pay for good talent. So at 7.1 lakhs, in fact, I was seeing some magazine that talked about campus placements. We were only next to a couple of IIMs and a couple of IITs, which was really heartwarming for us. So placements were really, really good. Like I told you, 100% of our students got placed in the last batch. Now, like the insurance company says, past performance is not necessarily an indication of future results or whatever it is. But yeah, we are very hopeful because what we know is that we are in touch with every one of the organizations where our students are working. So we are in touch with each one of our alumni and constantly asking them how things are working out for them, what are the challenges they are facing. And we are in touch with the organization asking how are our students faring, what are they working, what's working for them, what's not working for them. And almost all the organizations have said that they will come back for placements. So we're very, very happy with the placements of last year. We're very, very optimistic of the placements for the next year. And that story is a really great story at ISD.
So we have about 10 minutes left, and there are a lot of questions. So, Ravi, I'll request you to briefly touch upon some of those. To
Yeah.
begin with, we were just talking about engagement with organizations where our alumni work. So, there's also a question around how do you support and engage with the alumni? So, if you could briefly talk about that.
Yeah, very quickly. So one of the promises we made to our students is that while it's a one-year program, it's a lifelong relationship. And we're really, really clear about that because a lot of us came from, premier institutions in the country. I, for one, did an MBA, in 1988. And till date, I sort of, uh, that's the only contribution I had from that institution. And, we've always felt that you need to keep our students contemporary. And we also know that we are going to be learning as we go along. So our commitment to our students and alumni is that this is a lifelong relationship. So as we learn, we want to make sure you're getting a part of that learning. So we are in constant touch with each one of our alumni. So we have all the WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and so on and so forth. So just to give you an idea, it's not even 6 months since the alumni have started working. And we've already had one sort of coming together, and we did a program for a couple of days for our alumni, and we sort of made it available to everybody. And a bunch of them came. Some of them didn't want to come for that; they'll come for the next one. At the end of the year, we have something called a foundation week, where the big prominence given to our alumni, and it's of course fun and frolic, but it's also some intense engagement in the challenges that they've been facing in the organization that they're working. So all of us travel around the country, and all the time when we are in any new city, we are meeting up with our alums. We are talking to them about how they face, and they tell us that ISDM is like a circle of strength for them. So the other alums that they're able to talk to, the faculty and the sort of permanent members of ISDM that they're able to talk to, it's really a nice, well-knit family, which is like a circle of strength for all of them. So yeah, that's a huge commitment for us, because at the end of the day, if the students are doing well and the sector believes that our students are adding value, then really we have a reason to exist. And we're very clear that we want to be engaged with the sector and with our students.
Ravi, this one is for you. So our participants want to know that how easy or difficult was it for you to transition from a corporate career into the social sector?
So when I was sitting in the corporate world, it was very difficult, because every month you get this lovely check and you say maybe another 2 years, maybe another 1 year. And then people like me who made a shift pretty late in life, Priyanka announced, made that shift at 49. You're also thinking of how much money you need to lead a simple meaningful life and all that sort of stuff, and there's no end to that discussion. But I can tell you, ever since I've crossed over, my biggest regret is not having crossed over earlier. I can't tell you the value, the joy, the satisfaction that you get out of working in the sector. And I tell people, when you come into the sector, do it for yourself. A lot of people come in saying, I want to give back, I want to make a difference. All that's fine, but do it if it makes you happy. And I cannot tell you the joy, the difference it's made to my life. So if there was any challenge, it's like diving or things like that. When you're standing at the edge, you don't know what to expect. But once you make that leap of faith, my God, it's such an amazing space to be in. It's a humbling space to be. You meet some really amazing people. You go to bed with a nice feeling in your heart that I mean, if you're not adding value, at least you're not doing any further damage, to society, and it makes a huge difference. But the most important thing, and this is what I say to youngsters, to be able to make a difference in the sector, you need a long run. And I have denied myself a chance to have a long run because I made that shift only at 49. If you are 20, 25 and thinking what do you want to do, this is the time to make a change, because 30, 40 years of your life that you can give, you will be able to make a huge difference. So that's my, sort of two penny advice to youngsters. But I cannot tell you the joy, the satisfaction, somewhere I have become myself. I've become honest to myself. I think I was on stage, when I was in my banking life. No offense to banking or anything like that, but I was put up, I was doing something that I was not. I was an image. I think in this sector, I've just been able to become what we all call at ISDM, an authentic development professional.
One more question, Ravi. So this is what makes ISDM's one-year program at par or maybe better than other institutes' similar courses, which maybe could be of 2 years or even 1 year?
Okay, you might think this is prejudice, and maybe it is prejudice, but I can tell you that there is nothing like the program that ISDM has, certainly in this country and arguably in the world. There is really nothing that's been built by the sector for the sector. So if you're serious about a career in leadership and management in the sector, I guarantee you there is no other program that's as good as what we have, because of the caliber of people that come, because of the quality of the program, because of the intensity of the discussions and the pedagogy that we have. There is nothing like that. There is nothing like that to compare to start off. I've done an MBA from an IIM. Or this is a far more intense program than anything that I've come close to doing. It's not like an MBA in any case. So I would say that I can't think of a program. Now, it depends on if you want to do something else. If you want to go into grassroots social work, then you should go do an MSW program. And there are great institutions in the country that offer MSW program. If you're in that space who wants to study development, then you need to go into a development studies program. But if you want a program in working in organizations that work on social change, there is nothing like what you have at ISDM. That's number one. Number two is the DNA that we have at ISDM. There are institutions in the country that offer rural management programs, and I hear 90% of those students end up going for rural marketing or rural banking or rural finance jobs. And that's because of the DNA that the students bring to that space. I think in ISDM, that passion that all those 60 students bring to the classroom just fills everybody with an aspiration for life, which is linked to societal change, which is linked to leading an authentic life, which is linked to making a difference, and which is linked to living on your values, which are linked to universal values. So, I mean, I could be prejudiced, but I really think if you want a career in development management, there is nothing. And this is now speaking internally. And if I look at from the external world, when I look at placements, when I look at organizations and how they feel about our program, how they feel about our students, again, like I said, I don't know how many institutions working in social sector will command salaries of 7.1 lakhs. I don't know how many institutions will have the kind of organization and the range of organizations that will come to sort of recruit and hire from ISDM. And that's the power of what we're doing. And like I said, it's not what we're doing, it's the sector is doing. The sector is coming together to do what ISDM is doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Ravi. So that's with the questions that we had from the participants. And we're also closing the 7 o'clock deadline. So in case you just want to take a few seconds and share something from your side for all of us, it'll be great.
No, absolutely. The thing that fascinates me and it gives me so much of hope is the youngsters of our country. I really think that my biggest source of hope for our country and the world is the youngsters today, and I'm talking about that 25 plus minus 5 years old bracket, and they are inspiring. And for me, just spending time with students is therapeutic. I find spending time with the students is the most enjoyable part of what I do at ISDM, and it gives me all the satisfaction of all the hard work that one has put into ISDM. And it's not like every one of the youngsters is like that. It's a 5%, 10% group that I'm calling as this inspired group. But the country needs only less than a 5%, maybe a 1% of its youngsters to go into leadership roles, build organizations. And I personally love youngsters who want to set up their own organization, because they're the ones who can immediately start implementing what they've studied on ISDM. Those who go into organizations will have to bide their time and take their time to be able to drive some of those changes. But yeah, my big message to the country is that our hope lies in the youngsters, and anything we can do to nurture and facilitate our youngsters is very, very powerful and game changing for the country.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for those words. Great thank you to you for being with us today. And thank you to all the participants for engaging with us and all the lovely questions. If you would like to know more, please feel free to write to us or visit our website. There's also a telephone number. Please do call us and we are happy to talk to you, or even set up a call with other founders as well to get more perspective. Meanwhile, thank you so much and stay tuned for more webinars on the ISDM webinar series.
Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, everybody, for spending your evening with us. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi, and good night all.
Good night.